Hello everyone, and welcome to our Hangouts on Air series or Academy on Air series, focusing on performance video deep dive. Firstly, I'm Oren. I'm actually the performance video lead for EMEA, based here in Dublin. So I'm going to go through a little bit more detail into kind of what we're doing today. So I suppose a lot of this is built off the remit of the last day, where we went through some of the new product launches at a very high level that we are after bringing forward to help kind of promote performance video. Today we're going to go to the next level, so into, I suppose, the implementation and best practices of three of those key areas, optimization and best practices of that, and then some success stories that we've seen off the back of that, covering the three primary areas of audience, moving from intention to action, and then location extensions or driving store visits from there. Cool. So as we discussed the last day, I suppose the three key areas here is utilizing the scale and precision of YouTube to target the audience that matters to you, win their attention. So how can we easily do that, and what new formats have we brought out to encourage that? And lastly, how do we optimize and measure for success? And most importantly there, how do we set the correct expectations in place for that, so that we can see some core performance elements coming from YouTube and your video campaigns from there? So I suppose jumping right in at first, utilizing the scale and precision, as we said. So as we discussed the last day, we have introduced a new, and this is still in beta, a new product offering called Custom Intent Audiences. Essentially, this is tying up the powerful machine that is Google search, the accuracy and precision that is there, and bringing that across to YouTube. So this essentially works by someone searches for something like yoga near me, that automatically enters an audience list that you can then bid for proactively on YouTube. And that audience list only lives for 7 days. So the reason it only lives for 7 days is because we want to keep this as recent and as relevant as possible. Again, this is to kind of target the really core audience you're looking for here at the lower end of the funnel. So therefore, we want to keep it as accurate as possible so you can help drive those performance goals. So I know we touched on the overview of this the last day, so going to the next level deeper and how to actually set this up. So as this is still currently a beta due to launch, you will have to sync up with your account management team to make sure that your account is whitelisted for this. Happy to go through some of the processes with that in the Q&A later. But for the sake of this, we'll assume that the account is whitelisted. So once you've created your campaign and you're going to add your audience, simply same as adding in-market or affinity audiences, you just add the plus audiences button within the AdWords Next interface. From there, it lives within the in-market world. So people that say what are exactly searching for or planning, so the lower level than affinity, go in there, and at the bottom, you'll see this plus button for custom intent audiences. So similar to one level above, when you can create custom affinity audiences, this lives within the in-market or lower funnel audience kind of targeting area. So from there, there's three kind of core, I suppose, inputs. So firstly, to name your audience list, and I'll touch on the second one in a second, where you add the search terms, but there is a synergy between these two. So similar to how you would set up your search campaigns, think of this as an isolated audience. So therefore, if you're doing something that's, let's say, around brand generic space and different forms of generic, like tailor your audiences to that. So as an example, we said before, yoga places near me or whatever else it is. So you could have yoga location specific, have like 50 to 100 yoga specific terms. You have a different audience list then that's based off your brand, different audience list based off other products or services that you are offering. And I suppose the third bit, which is important when planning for that, is actually utilizing the keyword planner to determine what your volume here is. Now, a caveat on this. So this is still very much in beta. So therefore, the planning tools, similar to any product that we have in beta, are a little bit limited for the time being. Once this gets fully launched, we will have I suppose, a volume estimator there. But as a rule of thumb to begin with, we would utilize the keyword planner. So what we look at is, if you're getting sufficient search volumes on those terms, it should create a good audience list for custom intent audiences. So what we determine by that is, are you getting upwards of 100,000 impressions on those list of terms per month? If so, there's a good chance that will work as a custom intent audience. So just to rehash on that, so we don't currently have a planning tool, but this is what we kind of use as a litmus test in the interim whilst we're waiting for this to fully launch, to determine what kind of size audience you can target here. I can answer more in the Q&As if there's questions later, but again, this lives within the lower funnel world when it comes to YouTube. So therefore, in market, probably custom intent below, in line with remarketing as far as what the relative volumes would be. Cool. So once you've actually determined, I suppose, the lower funnel audience it is you want to target for YouTube with performance latent goals, the next important step, as we discussed before, is actually getting them off YouTube and to perform an action, whether that's on your website or external channel, etc. And what we introduced, which we touched on the last time, was Trivia for Action, which essentially has a clear and consistent call to action message that relays over your video, whether that's on mobile or desktop, and that will then lead your user from YouTube onto your website as easily as possible. So there's a couple of examples of call to actions that you can use here, but very focused: get quote, buy now, subscribe, learn more, etc. So just how that looks across the board. So as always with Google, we're kind of mobile first. So when this is in landscape mode, all you will see is the call to action overlay, which hovers for the first 5 seconds. So it's fully visible for the first 5 seconds. It then disappears into a thumbnail for the remainder of the video, unless you click or hover over that, in which the action comes up over that again. When we switch to portrait mode, we don't have that aspect, but what we do have is a clear and consistent call to action or companion banner that sits under the video throughout the duration of the video, up until the point of the video ending. And then at the end of the video, we have a end screen that lives there for 7 seconds. So essentially, the end screen, the companion banner, and the call to action overlay, all of the exact same look and presence with a consistent call to action message. So it gives the user 3 opportunities to actually exit the video once it's relevant to them and go onto your website to perform that performance-laden action. As we said, get quote, subscribe, learn more, etc. When it comes to desktop, obviously it's a bit more of a full experience. So throughout the video, the call to action overlay with the companion banner are actually present. So similar to mobile, in portrait mode or in landscape mode, the call to action overlay hovers for the first 5 seconds, then disappears into just the call to action button. They can hover over that to find out more. The companion banner sits throughout the video in its entirety, similar to the older method that we used to have. And at the very end, again, there is that 7-second end screen, which kind of just takes over the entirety of the video screen, where they can click on that then to kind of go forward and engage further with the ad itself. Cool. So when we talk about the implementation of this, so kind of cart before the horse, as we kind of went through the implementation of the audience strategy first. Obviously, when it comes to a video campaign, you actually have to set up the video format first. So just to be kind of aware of that when you're going through the process. But it's quite straightforward. And this is out of beta, available for everyone. So once you're in the AdWords Next interface, if you just go to plus to create a new campaign, and like everything here, make sure that you're selecting the video campaign. And this is where it can get a little bit confusing. So we just want to make sure that everyone is aware of how this is actually set up within the interface. But it actually sits under 2 different headers as leads and website traffic when you're selecting your customer goals when it comes here. So the reason that it's under 2 different headlines and they both lead to the same thing is purely when it would get to the kind of the optimization and measurement piece, to make sure that we're setting the correct goals that you want to optimize towards here. So if this is a classic branding campaign, branding consideration would be there. But as we're looking to drive an action, whether that is to actually go and perform an action on a website, whether it's buy now, get a quote, a lead focus action, otherwise you're just looking to drive qualified website traffic. Those are the 2 kind of primary goals that we look at here. Cool. So the last little format change then is actually location extensions. We'll touch on store visits in a little bit, but location extensions is pretty much exactly like it is on search. So it just adds that location extension below the ad that's available on YouTube, which allows you to get directions, call the business, see store hours, read reviews, etc. So the exact same kind of functionality that you would have on search, we've now brought to YouTube as well. So similar to how you would set that up for search, you would create the ad extension within the AdWords Next interface, and you'd have to link your Google My Business account from there, and then it's an auto opt-in from there. So a quick caveat on that as well. So if you have YouTube and search within the one account or the one existing account as it stands, this is an auto opt-in. So therefore, when someone is within your store location remit and they get served with an ad, they will see that store location or the location extensions form come up. So therefore, if they live within the same account, you can just go, these steps will automatically be kind of created from there. If you don't want this to do, there is an opt-out function, but you'll have to get in touch with your account management team here in Google to do so. Cool. So we're going to talk about optimize and measure, but I think a slight bit before we go to optimize and measure is actually talking about turning that attention into action. So we've discussed who the core kind of target audience is and what new solutions we have there as far as custom intent go. We've also said what platform or what format is easiest to get them from YouTube off onto their desired actions, their websites, etc., utilizing Trivia for Action. But most importantly, what we have to look at is, does the creative correlate with what you're actually looking to do? Like we know that the audience shift is actually going less from TV or more from TV onto YouTube. We've got a stat here from the US, 20% of US adults don't pay for TV or cable as it's referred to over there. But we're also seeing a surge in teens utilizing YouTube and those platforms. So 2 times more teens watch YouTube, Netflix, or on-demand TV as opposed to traditional cable TV. So therefore, they have an awful lot of time to be spent on this platform. They're used to getting bombarded with ads. So therefore, how can you actually stand out from the crowd? So what we did here is we actually, and this is just 3 quick snippets from this, but to give you a little bit of background. In our YouTube headquarters in San Bruno, we've got a team called Unskippable Labs, which is essentially made of former executive creative directors in some of the top agencies across the US. And what they were tasked with doing is actually analyzing all the ads that currently sit within, sorry about this, sit within YouTube performance space, so utilizing Trivia for Action, doing custom intent audiences, etc., and seeing what the common themes were with the successful ads off the back of that, purely from, I suppose, a more subjective kind of creative standpoint. And the 3 kind of key areas which we saw were pivotal across there were having a clear offer or call to action. So this is very much a lower funnel video play. So it's not going to be your hero moment where you've got a classic video of a car being shown over the Alps for 30 to 40 seconds and then the flash up for the generic car brand at the end. This is very much trying to get someone to perform an action, learn more about your product and go from there. So they've gone through the awareness consideration set. Now they're in the action or kind of lower funnel aspect of things. So therefore, a clear offer or call to action is quite necessary there. Secondly, front loading it. So with all YouTube creatives or trivia creatives, we always say the first 5 seconds are pivotal. Here, it's all about getting that offer, what you want to do out there as quickly as possible. We'll go through some case studies later, but all those videos, and they're available on their channels, have executed that quite well. And thirdly, repeat it. So whether you're using 15, 20, 30 seconds or a minute, make sure that you've got that clear and consistent call to action, but you're also making that as prevalent as possible throughout the creative. So getting that message, making sure it's clear, front loading it, and then repeating it throughout. Now, this all sounds quite basic, but these are the core kind of elements that we saw from there. I think the last bit that we can share from that is the better performing creatives actually sat within the 15 to 20 second mark as opposed to the kind of 30 second and above mark. So kind of getting your message out there as quickly as possible, repeating it, making it aesthetically pleasing, and then utilizing the format to actually get people to be able to deliver on that message, get from YouTube onto your website, and then perform that action, lead, convert, whatever it is you're looking to get from there. So we're going to talk a little bit about optimization and measurement, and happy to take a couple of questions from this at the end, because we do go through a little bit of detail and kind of one bits over the other. But I suppose the most important thing, like everything we do here at Google, I suppose, is auto-optimizing. So how can we actually enable our tools to help make your lives easier so you can go off and spend your time working on creative, building more campaigns, expanding your audience strategy and everything else there. So similar to search and display, we've now implemented some form of machine learning into the YouTube platform, utilizing the exact same signals. So 70 million different signals across all our owned platforms, Gmail, YouTube, Maps, etc., to help us kind of deliver on where can we best get results and how can we scale that quickly. So within YouTube, and when you are setting up your Trivia for Action campaign, this is the default bid type that's there. So what we utilize is target CPA bidding. So essentially, this looks at what CPA you want to get. Let that have a learning period based on 14 or 30 days, depending on how long your conversion window is. So as an example, if you're utilizing AdWords conversion tracking, it's a 30-day window. You want to run this for a test of 30 days to make sure that the system is getting all the conversions that can be effectively attributed back from day one. So therefore, it's got sufficient data to actually go from there. But like everything else with target CPA, I think you have to be very specific with the goals that you're setting day one and what your roadmap to assure that the machine learning is getting all the data it requires is. So there's 2 basic steps, and I'm happy to talk through these in a little bit more detail. So the first thing is, how do we actually determine what our target CPA should be? So looking through multiple campaigns through the beta period now that we've launched, a lot of the pitfalls can come around where you start off with a target CPA in line with branded search and expect it to perform to the same level. So what we see here is video is obviously a passive platform. So it's at the lower end of the funnel, but this is still very much part of an expansive audience strategy. So therefore, your CPA to begin with shouldn't be aligned with what your brand search, which has been there forever, is going to do. So what we say is if you're brand new to video, you should look at something like generic search and probably use 2 times that CPA as a starting point. Once the machine learning starts hitting that CPA and once you're happy with the conversion volume coming through there, you can then optimize that down by decreasing that CPA from 5, 10%, whatever it is over a period of time. If you had run video historically, and I'll talk through what the kind of changes have come through in the back end with conversions momentarily. But if you had run video, let's say 12 months ago, weren't necessarily happy with the results or were happy with the results, you can look at that CPA and use that as a starting point. So even if it's a little bit higher than you're comfortable with, you've known that you've hit that before. So start there and then kind of work it down slowly once the machine learning has actually taken over and realizes it can get X amount of conversions at that CPA, then you can start to work it down. I suppose another small pitfall is if you are driving on search or display 1 to 2 conversions a day, obviously that's not sufficient data. On YouTube, it might be a little bit less. So what we recommend is at least 20 conversions a day coming from your YouTube campaigns in order to allow our machine learning and target CPA actually accrue enough data to determine where those conversions are coming from. So therefore they can optimize towards that in the future. Cool. So I suppose I kind of alluded to some changes that we made in the back end when it comes to measurement. But I suppose the first kind of thing to be aware of is cross-device is imperative here when it comes to YouTube. So what we see is that 75% of adults start on one device. So your mobile, you're browsing throughout the day, you're hit with a YouTube ad that appeals to you. You click on it, but you might not necessarily convert there. You go home later and you go onto your website and convert. Like we've been preaching this story for a long time, but it's very indicative of the behavior that we see on YouTube. But we've actually allowed for that within our conversion tracking. So just, I suppose, to talk about where we were and where we are now when it comes to AdWords conversion tracking, and then I can talk through what the 3 kind of core pillars here are. So we made some huge leaps in terms to what's improved in AdWords conversion tracking over the course of the last 12 months. The 2 primary ones were with cross-device conversion tracking across YouTube, which wasn't necessarily available before. So therefore, someone that searches for the ad or is on YouTube, sees the ad, goes to convert in a separate device. Historically, within the AdWords interface, you would see 0 conversions there because the chain was broken. I suppose where the second chain was also broken was within what we call web app measurement. So essentially, if you're within the YouTube app, you then click on the call to action overlay and that brings you onto Chrome or Safari or whatever browser you have on your mobile device. That would also be a broken chain. So we've fixed those 2 in the background over the course of the last 12 months. That was rolled out last November with the changes kind of backdating 30 days from there. So we're a lot more confident in our AdWords kind of conversion tracking mechanism from there. Thirdly, as well, AdWords conversion tracking is currently the only solution that allows you to see view through conversions here. So essentially, someone has not performed a billable action. So I could talk about being a billable action here is someone who has either seen or paid for the ad, so it's gone to 30 seconds, or once they've hit that cost per view threshold, otherwise clicked on one of the call to actions. So the call to action overlay, the companion banner, or the end screen. So if they haven't performed any of those actions, but have seen 80% of your video or 50% of your video, and then go on to convert through another channel, we can then attribute those towards view through conversions, whereas you could not do that through any other channels. So I suppose why we're going hard on AdWords conversion tracking here is the core element here is because we've made the most progress as a tracking mechanism to prove that YouTube works with AdWords conversion tracking. We're a little bit behind that when it comes to our analytics platform, but we are hoping to catch up on that within 2019. So if you are setting up for success and kind of building this day one, we do recommend that you utilize AdWords conversion tracking as the main measurement piece from there. Cool. And the last piece, and I won't spend too much time on this because there's, I suppose, a few more variables here with how you can actually opt into this or not, but it is utilizing store visits. So this is out of beta again. This is open to anyone once they hit the privacy thresholds here. But similar to search, this essentially is served off a view basis. So someone who has viewed your ad on YouTube then goes to visit one of your physical store locations. We then attribute a conversion to that under the store visits kind of mechanism. So there is actually a lot of, and I won't go through all the points here, but I'll go through what I see as the 3 biggest key areas for this. So firstly, you would probably need between 20 plus physical locations to firstly hit the first privacy threshold. 90% of those actually have to be verified. So 90% verification through your Google My Business. The other core aspect is purely just a volume play. So whilst we're gathering the data in the back end, we have to assure that there's sufficient volume that we can safely attribute if someone has physically visited that store or not. And this is where a lot of it falls down. Unfortunately, in search, we used to give, I think it was €1,000 a day for 14 days to determine the store visit. visits. With YouTube, it's a little bit different, where we actually don't give any estimates to begin with. This is purely because of the synergy between the power of the creative and actually the causality of someone going to visit that store. So as an example, you could have a poor performing creative, spend $1 million on it, and it mightn't drive any store visits. So therefore, we don't think it's hit the privacy threshold for store visits. Whereas the opposite, you could have a really strong creative and only spend $5,000 promoting it, and you could actually be eligible for store visits there. So there's a big variable because it depends on the power of the creative and the causality there. But what I would say is, I'm going to go through how this is set up in the front end as far as going through the conversions and seeing the store visits conversion action within the conversions tab, similar to as you would on search. But if you don't see any of this and you feel that your store is eligible, please do reach out to your account managers that are based here in Google. Cool. So I suppose as a quick recap, and I know that I'm from Cork, then the south of Ireland, so I tend to talk a little bit fast, but I'm happy to take any questions at the end. But as I went through, we talked about custom intent audiences before. We kind of went a level deeper here into how to actually set that up and also measure for success off the back of that. So how can you actually determine what volume is coming from here, or what's a good litmus test there? Win their attention and encourage action, how to set up Truvy for action campaigns, what they look like on mobile and desktop, as well as what's the creative that can actually really sync to that. So what are the 3 core pillars from the creative there? And lastly, optimizing and measurement for success. So what have we changed in terms of the back end of our measuring with the AdWords conversion pixel when it comes to YouTube? And what does TCPA do to actually optimize towards that to make your lives a little bit easier? Cool. So I know I rushed through that in 20 minutes, but sorry, I keep forgetting about the case studies, just to talk quickly through the case studies. So we've got 3 case studies, all based in the US, that have seen 3 different pillars of success off the back of these. So the first is Betterment. So Betterment essentially is a kind of a B2B platform. Highly competitive search space. We're maxing out on search and finding it quite inefficient. What they wanted to do was utilize YouTube to actually drive efficient traffic. So what they found is that they actually got a 25% lower cost per click, because anyone who deals in the financial services or competitive B2B space knows that those CPCs can ring from anything from €5 up to all the way to $20, $30 in some cases. So therefore, to get more qualified, more efficient traffic, they looked where they could get this and utilized YouTube for that. Secondly, Masterclass. So I assume everyone here has been exposed to some form of Masterclass ad. Hopefully, so it's not just me coming across the board. But Masterclass essentially ran classic TrueView in line with these goals, and then they saw that this innovation had come out, so they switched it across to Truvy for action, and they saw that they increased their CTR 2x, so 100% increase, whilst their cost per acquisition went down by over a quarter. And lastly, when it comes to store visits, was Jerome's, who's a furniture store based in the US, wanted to qualify YouTube with actually physically driving store visits. So this was our very first tester globally for store visits, and they saw great success here off the back of it. So at a $15 cost per visit to the store. So when you're a furniture store, you know that the average customer is going to spend X amount. So $15 was quite efficient for them to actually attribute driving store visits all the way back to YouTube to get that efficient volume through the door. Cool. So we're happy to share all these case studies are externally shareable. So reach out to your account management team if you're looking to coordinate them from there. Cool. So as I said, I kind of went through that at 100 miles an hour, but happy to see if we have any questions. And we have one from Vaughn, which is very good. So will there be smart lists for these campaigns? So I assume what you mean here is an auto-generated list for these campaigns. Correct me if I'm wrong, and feel free to kind of add in the question there if I am wrong. But what we're actually working at in the background now is Custom Intent 2.0, which I assume is going to be the smart list. So what audience can we automatically attribute towards those campaigns? We're working with how to get smarter with our custom intent signals, albeit we're utilizing the search keyword list, but how can we auto-generate those lists based off the back of your search and positive performing campaigns? So what we determined from that is once this is out of beta, we will be looking to find out how we can make this more smart and automate that from there. Obviously, custom intent isn't out of beta as of yet. It will be in the coming months. Can't give a date there yet. With Custom Intent 2.0, we are looking for how we can best kind of utilize that. Cool. So the second question, so can we go from manual bidding in TrueView for action campaigns? Very good question. So as it currently stands, the automatic and the only bidding mechanism that we use within TrueView for Action is target CPA. For the time being, and when I say the time being, probably up until September of this year, you can actually apply to your account management team to get whitelisted for cost per view bidding. So therefore, in the two scenarios we mentioned where you mightn't be comfortable or you might not know what target CPA to actually start off with, some users find it easier to start off with cost per view bidding there, determine what their CPA is, and then go into target CPA. So that is available on a whitelisting process for the coming 3 months, but that will be sunset later this year, just to set expectations. So to go back to that, with the manual bidding, it should purely be used to determine what a good cost per acquisition target actually looks like, and then moving on to TCPA, because this won't be a long-term solution off the back of that. Cool. Oh, one more question coming in. No more questions. Fantastic. Okay, I know that was quite quick and efficient, but thank you very much for being part of the Academy on Air series, and hopefully you took a few things away from that and I wasn't talking too quickly. So thank you very much, and we'll see you guys again.